Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a pretty big question. How might figures like Donald Trump and Elon Musk impact your personal wealth?
Right. We got this really interesting YouTube analysis sent in by you, our listeners, something like elite education in an era of upheaval.
Exactly. And we're going to pull out the key insights, specifically thinking about, your financial well-being.
Yeah, forget the sort of political back and forth. We're not here for that.
No.
Our goal is really to look under the hood, see how these individuals might influence the markets and what that could mean economically.
And this analysis uses historical psychology, right?
Yeah.
To frame these leaders.
It does. That's the lens they use, and it's the approach we'll follow today. Trying to understand potential consequences, not taking sides.
The video actually mentions that many business leaders are already talking about Trump's personality, thinking about how it affects their own wealth.
Which really caught our attention. It makes sense to bring that same kind of focused perspective to your investments.
And there's a warning right at the start of the video, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. A crucial one. Don't just blindly support or oppose these figures.
Right.
Instead, focus on how their actions, their policies, might cause those ripples in the market that, well, hit your bottom line.
Okay, so let's get into the framework the video uses. It starts with different types of leaders.
Sure.
First are the strategic leaders.
Yeah, strategic. Think Napoleon, Churchill, people with a long-term vision.
And the financial angle there is.
Well, they tend to create lasting change, like Napoleon's legal code. The video suggests that if you can align investments with their long-term strategies.
Could be beneficial
Potentially, yes.
over the long haul.
Okay. Then the second type, storyteller leaders. Roosevelt, Bush Jr. were the examples.
Right. These leaders are often good at compromise, finding common ground.
So they create more stability.
Generally, yes. Predictable environments. And wealth management institutions usually prefer that, Less surprise, easier planning. Makes sense. Which brings us to the third category, the one the video links to Trump, the agitator.
Mm-hmm. Examples given were Hitler, Mussolini.
That sounds like a financial red flag.
The analysis definitely frames it that way. These leaders use strong rhetoric, stir emotions.
But lack long-term planning.
That's the argument. They're seen as favoring disruption, which the video argues makes them wealth destroyers. Historically, wealth preservation struggles in that kind of environment.
The video really emphasizes Trump's short-term focus, the division. Even compares his presidency to reality TV.
Yeah, playing the role rather than fulfilling the function, perhaps.
So the financial takeaway, according to this analysis, is basically be cautious.
That seems to be the core message, that this style doesn't really foster the stability needed for, long-term wealth building.
Now, this is where it gets quite detailed. The video tries to map out Trump's psychological code based on public information. First trait, narcissistic personality.
Right. A need for constant attention, admiration, feeling anxious if ignored.
Like Louis XIV or Nero, the video says.
Exactly. Always needing the spotlight.
And the risk for decision-making.
Difficulty taking criticism or advice, which means potentially flawed decisions because you're not getting that crucial feedback loop.
Like speeding without a map.
Or anyone telling you there's a cliff ahead. Yeah, that's the analogy used. No course correction.
Okay. Second trait, Machiavellianism. What does that look like in practice?
It's about being skillful, maybe even cunning in controlling and manipulating people or situations, shifting stances maybe for personal advantage.
The video compared this to Tacitus.
Yes, the Greek tyrant known for his clever tactics in gaining and keeping power. It's about achieving goals sometimes, regardless of the methods.
And the third trait is immediate gratification, wanting results now.
Exactly. Impatience with long-term policies or strategies.
Yeah.
Think of the marshmallow test, taking the one marshmallow now instead of waiting for two later.
So how might that play out in policy?
It could lead to more impulsive decisions, things that offer a quick win, maybe, without fully considering the downstream consequences.
Okay, so if you combine those three traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, immediate gratification, what kind of decision patterns does the video suggest we might see?
Well, the analysis points towards very binary thinking, win or lose, black or white.
Not much room for nuance.
Apparently not. Like into perhaps unsophisticated thinking, like the example given of someone just reacting to TV characters as purely good or purely evil.
Interesting comparison. What else?
A big focus on the personal brand, image, approval ratings, maybe prioritizing those over the actual duties of the office.
Like a pop star worrying about popularity.
That was the comparison, yes.
But
a focus on staying popular rather than the nitty-gritty of governing.
And finally,
A tendency to maximize short-term benefit, potentially neglecting those long-term risks we talked about.
but the video includes a pretty important caveat here, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It stresses that this is an interpretation. It's based on media portrayals, public appearances.
Which might not be the full picture.
Exactly. We don't have complete data. There's how someone sees themselves, how insiders see them, and then there's the media image. They can all be quite different.
Good point. So looking at history, the video says this style isn't unique. Who else comes up?
They mention Andrew Jackson, the seventh U.S. president, populist anti-establishment,
Oh,
also Roman Emperor Nero, known for self-indulgence, erratic rule, and Silvio Berlusconi in Italy. Strong personal brand, often bucking political norms.
and historically, what are the potential outcomes for leaders with these kinds of traits, according to the video?
It suggests two main paths. One is lasting political influence, like Jackson managed to achieve.
And the other?
Marginalization, maybe even removal from power due to their excesses, like Nero or Caligula, a more destructive end.
And given Trump's age, the video suggests
That these patterns are probably quite ingrained, unlikely to change significantly, which implies the impact, whatever it is, could be quite significant and maybe irreversible.
let's shift to the economy then.
Yeah.
How does the video see Trump's policies affecting, our wealth?
It acknowledges some potential short-term positives: tax cuts, deregulation, maybe infrastructure spending, protectionism. These might give a temporary boost.
Right.
But it emphasizes major long-term risks: potential economic downturns both in the U.S. and globally, instability.
Domestically and internationally.
Yes, and concerns about the Federal Reserve, too.
How so?
Worry about political pressure influencing Fed policy. Could that lead to asset bubbles, inflation?
Like 1929. That's a stark comparison.
It is. The video draws that parallel. It also questions the long-term success of trade wars, citing history.
Suggesting they often lead to economic damage.
And questioning whether the leader fully grasps the long-term strategic consequences, like playing checkers when it's really a chess game.
What about the impact on society, on wealth distribution?
Concerns about growing social divides, increasing wealth inequality.
The video even tries to explain why populist leaders might get support from less affluent groups, despite policies maybe favoring the rich.
Yeah, it touches on things like the wisdom of the crowd effect, maybe information access issues,
No.
how beliefs spread,
And the ultimate economic fear.
potential for debt crises, economic recession. The bottom line from the video's analysis is that this kind of leadership represents a significant risk factor for wealth management, something you need to consider very carefully.
Okay, let's bring Elon Musk into this. The video calls him a different type of narcissist, a visionary narcissist. How is that different?
Well, the analysis suggests that while both might exhibit narcissistic traits, Musk's is tied more to a grand vision.
Like human progress, technology.
Exactly. With himself positioned as the key driver of that future.
Is there a downside identified?
The potential risk highlighted is prioritizing that grand vision, maybe at the expense of the well-being of people living now. The video used a pretty dramatic comparison to Thanos from the Avengers.
Wow, okay. What are Musk's main tools of influence, according to this analysis?
It boils down to three things. Technology, obviously. Capital, the huge amounts he controls. And his massive social media presence.
Which he uses to shape narratives.
And control discourse, yeah. Very effectively.
So, Trump and Musk, how might they interact? The video speculates on cooperation versus conflict.
It sees some common ground. Both seem to dislike government oversight, maybe regulation.
And both are masters of social media.
Definitely. But their core focuses diverge. Musk is tech, future-oriented. Trump is more about nationalism, maybe older industries.
Potentially conflicting ideologies, then.
Could be. So the video suggests maybe short-term cooperation on specific issues is possible.
But long-term harmony seems unlikely.
Less probable, according to this view. And again, the caveat. This is based on public information, media narrative.
The friend's eye view versus the public persona.
Yeah.
Got it.
Mhm.
How does the video see Musk influencing government and the economy more broadly?
Well, he seems to want to integrate his ventures, SpaceX, Starlink, Tesla, with the government for contracts and support.
But he also challenges authorities sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Think about the COVID factory reopening issues or his criticisms of the Biden administration. He's not afraid to push back.
Is his approach seen as different from Trump's in that regard?
Generally, yes. More considered, maybe more long-term focused in his strategy, even when challenging things.
And its economic impact? It's complicated.
Very huge positive contributions through technological innovation, no doubt, but also potential negatives through, say, market disruption or using his influence in ways that might seem like manipulation.
The analysis gets quite speculative about Musk's future role, doesn't it? Almost sci-fi.
It does. It throws out the idea of him becoming a kind of tech emperor in the AI era.
Blurring the lines between a corporation and a government.
Exactly. Using the fictional umbrella corporation as a sort of cautionary tale of what unchecked corporate power in tech could look like.
And this is linked to AI development.
The video suggests this is sort of inherent in where AI might be heading, concentrating power. The big question then becomes, will Musk achieve that vision, or will someone else, maybe even more ambitious, overtake him?
Fascinating, if a bit unnerving.
Yeah.
Okay, so given all this potential uncertainty swirling around figures like Trump and Musk, what does the video advise for wealth management strategies for you? the listener?
The main takeaway is more risk means you need more diversification.
Spread your bets wider.
Precisely. Think about extreme risk scenarios and diversify accordingly. Across stocks, international markets, gold, maybe some crypto, real estate, other tangible things.
Does it mention any specific sectors?
For stocks, yeah.
Huh.
It suggests potential short-term plays in areas like energy, infrastructure, defense things that might align with Trump's stated priorities.
And longer term.
Longer-term potential in AI, autonomous driving, space tech areas more aligned with Musk's world. But
Caution is needed.
big caution. Short-term bubbles, potential crashes are a real concern mentioned.
What about crypto?
Seen as a potential hedge if, say, Trump's policies were to devalue the dollar. But crypto has its own huge risks, right? So the recommendation is diversify, maybe have some exposure, but keep it limited, don't bet the farm.
And hedging against political instability generally.
The usual suspects. Gold, international investments, maybe safe haven currencies like the Swiss franc or Japanese yen. Even U.S. Treasury bonds, potentially.
What about real estate? Specifically U.S. real estate.
Short term, things like inflation or low interest rates could maybe boost prices, but it's complex. They also mention overseas markets like Singapore or Dubai potentially doing well.
But there's a timing issue here, isn't there?
Yes, the video notes that ideally you'd have started these diversification moves earlier. Some asset prices have already moved quite a bit.
Okay. Now, a specific question came from a listener about Tesla stock. The video had a pretty clear view on that.
It did. It acknowledges the incredible success under Musk, obviously. But it emphasizes how much of that current value is tied directly to Elon Musk himself. His health, his focus, his freedom from major political or legal trouble.
It's heavily dependent on one person.
Extremely. The video compares it to early IBM, totally reliant on its founder, versus a company with a deep, robust structure that can survive leadership changes.
Highlighting the fragility.
Yeah. What happens to Tesla stock if something happens to Musk? That's the core concern. The analysis basically says you need to pray nightly that he stays okay.
So not really a stable, long-term anchor for wealth preservation.
That's the conclusion drawn. High risk, high reward, absolutely. But maybe not the place for capital you can't afford to lose because of that single-person dependency.
And past gains.
Attributed partly to Musk's continued functioning, maybe even some luck in the analysis. They bring up historical examples, Henry Ford, Kodak.
Figures in companies that were once dominant but faced decline.
Exactly. To show that Musk and Tesla aren't necessarily immune to those kinds of shifts, it's a reminder that things change.
And the final point on this was about wealth preservation itself.
Yes. The video stresses that preserving wealth often takes more effort, more knowledge, more careful planning than creating it in the first place.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. What's the core takeaway for our listeners from this whole deep dive into the video's analysis?
I think the main insight is that understanding the potential psychology, the likely decision patterns of these really influential figures like Trump, like Musk, is becoming, well, crucial.
It's not just politics, it's finance too.
It's essential for navigating wealth management today. You have to look beyond just the headlines, the day-to-day noise.
And try to analyze the deeper drivers.
Yes, and think about the potential consequences for the economy, for markets, and ultimately for you.
And what should listeners be thinking about as they move forward from here?
The video really encourages you to take these kinds of frameworks, the leadership types, the psychological traits, and try applying them yourself.
To analyze other influential people.
Exactly. Identify potential risks, maybe spot opportunities that others are missing.
And the final thought from the source material was pretty sobering, wasn't it?
It was. It suggested the next decade could be really challenging for just holding on to your wealth, urging everyone to be diligent, to do their homework.
Move beyond just consuming news.
Right. Focus on analyzing, safeguarding your finances. The video basically says the real work, the battle for your financial security later in life, that's starting now.